Here we go again might be an understatement, especially when it comes to Ubisoft, because apparently they're going to go back on that apology they gave us a few weeks ago. You remember that? That nice bright red background that said, we just hired these historians and cultural experts for fun. They're crazy fun to party with. You know, you wouldn't believe the kind of breakdancing that Thomas Lockley gets up to during the podcast breaks, man. He's nuts. But we all know that that was a lie, and they come out and confirm that, oh, we created the most authentic Japan possible, you see. As seen right here. Now, this is by Karl Onnee, all right? Like Monet the painter, but without the talent, right? That's why they took out the Mo. It's just Onnee now. Onnee. Anyway, it says Assassin's Creed Shadows lead producer claims, quote, we are trying to create a game that is authentic as possible. And of course, Spencer Picculi over here, the editor-in-chief of BountyIntoComics.com, nails the featured image here with Yasuke, a nearly 7-foot-tall man carrying a club that weighs more than most of his opponents. Yes, authentic, indeed. But it gets much worse, okay? I just want this whole article is full of quotes, okay? If you want to go down and like read the insanity of this guy, how like in a bubble he is, okay? Go ahead and check the description down below for a link, okay? But I want to focus particularly on this quote right here. And it says, since we are making a game in Japan, we do hope to appeal to more Japanese players. So it is very important that we try to be as authentic as possible. We come from a humble position, you know. That we try to be as authentic. We come from a humble position that if we don't know anything and we need to learn everything from scratch. Unlike my reading skills, right? But I just want to pause there for a second. We're not done with the quote. I just want to pause there for a second. That's troubling. It is current year, bro. It's current year. Look at the calendar, bro. It's current year. How are you not like aware of Japanesey things? How have you managed to get this far in life without understanding the core values of the Japanese? They don't keep it a secret. In fact, it's like one of the tourism attractions is how their culture values itself, right? Like the cultural preservation of Japan is kind of what it's known for. How do you guys like miss that? How do you miss the blending of past and present even in their current architecture? Like it's a complete mystery to me. I have a feeling what they're talking about is we didn't know for sure what was Japanese, Korean, or Chinese because we can't be bothered to tell. And so we asked Google, and Google wasn't too good at it either. So we're going to have to take a trip to Japan. All right, and they did. They went to Japan, and somehow even taking pictures of the place allowed them to screw it up, okay? They decided, you know what, this real place that we took pictures of, that's not authentic enough. We need to make it more authentic-y. We need to be more authentic-y with this than the real life place that we took a picture of for reference. I don't know how I could communicate the insanity of that, right? Like you went to just think about this, okay? Let's make it real simple. You went out into the woods, right? Let's say you live somewhere where there's trees, okay? I know that's a very small percentage of the world these days, but let's pretend that you have access to a tree line, okay? And you take a picture of a tree and you say, I'm going to go and I'm going to trace this tree into a tree on a piece of paper, okay? I'm going to trace it down. I'm going to print this paper out, and I'm going to trace that down, okay? All right, so you get that all done. You're ready to go. But instead of drawing a tree, you put a Volkswagen in there with, like, bird wings. Authentic, guys! Authentic! Ubisoft. Authentic, right? Authentic. We'll continue with the quote. He says, we are making sure we respect things because that is something very important to Japanese people. See, this is an interesting statement. Pause, right? Pause. This is an interesting statement. Think about that for a minute. Respect is important to these people, not us. These people care about respect. This is what I like to do, is I just like to listen to what people aren't saying, okay? It's very easy to be clear about this. When we're done with this, I'll recontextualize what he said. I'll simplify what he said into a correct statement that he should have made on this. Not anything that's honest, but something that doesn't sound as mental gymnastic special as this, okay? So listen to that, okay? So The Japanese people care a lot about respect. Not anybody else. We can't show respect to anybody else. We got to the Japanese people are the ones that are just stick up their butt about this. They're just so stingy and stubborn about this respect thing. You know, it's like, what is that statement really supposed to mean? Like, you're familiar with a Freudian slip. I make them all the time here. You're familiar with Freudian slips. This is one of those where it's like, these Japanese people. Bleh. You know, there's so much contempt just in that section of a sentence right there for the Japanese people. Like, really, listen to that. We are making sure we respect things because that is something very important to Japanese people. Nobody else needs respect, right? Just the Japanese people. This isn't favoritism. This is anger. This is that subtle frustration of, why won't you let me have my drum machine and hip-hop tune background samurai battles? Arrgh! That's what that is. It's a little temper tantrum, a little quick one, little blip. You might call it a microaggression. You remember that? Remember that term, microaggression? That disappeared pretty quick, didn't it? Anyway, we'll continue. That is something very important to Japanese people, as it is in many other countries. Now, again, he didn't go on to list any other people. He had to single out the Japanese people, right? He didn't say the Italian people, the Egyptian people, the other cultures that we have referenced in the Assassin's Creed franchise. He deliberately nails out the Japanese people. This is what I'm talking about, the contempt, right? It's very simple. Again, when we get to the end of it, I'll clarify what should have been said here, all right? So it's very important. When you come in, you don't want to come in as if you know everything, like Thomas Lockley, right? We want to build something that even when they being the Japanese, they see and play it, they will recognize their own country. I don't think so. I don't think so, right? So as I said, I'll recontextualize this, all right? I'll condense it down into what he actually should have said, all right? Now, this is not the truth, okay? This is more corporate speak. But what should have come out of Karl Onnee's mouth in this respect should have been, since we are making a game in Japan, it is very important that we respect the cultural boundaries as we have with every other game that we have created in the Assassin's Creed franchise. This is a franchise that prides itself on getting things right about history as we tell an alternate history involving themes of mysticism and ancient technologies brought forward into the future. That's what he should have said. Do you want to know why? Because nobody out there gets singled out now. There's no rage and contempt that's subtly veiled here, that's just so gently beneath the surface, right? Like, you know, when water's just about to boil, there's lots of little bubbles down at the bottom of the pot, right? Well, that's what that statement is that he made. My condensed statement is, we're making a game, guys, just like every other game in this franchise. Ba-dum-bump, ba-dum-bump. You know? But he couldn't do that. He had to get that jab in. Had to be like, oh, you Japanese and your respect, your cultural heritage. So angry, these French people, you know? It's like they lost a couple of world wars or something, right? A little angry, you know? Feeling like they got to go out and pick on somebody else. Perhaps a smaller island chain country that perhaps has been picked on quite a bit over the past 30 years and doesn't quite deserve anything that this French company is delivering to him. It's very strange what's happening here, okay? Now, they drilled this so hard, right, that they're like, it's very important. And like I said, they went to Japan and took pictures of things and walked around and absorbed the ambiance of it all, right? That French word, ambiance, right, of the whole Japanese, you know, like scenery and space, the buildings that were left behind, of course, that hadn't been destroyed by hurricanes or, you know, inclement weather or, you know, earthquakes that are quite frequent in Japan. So they were able to take some like historical reference pictures. But like I said, they took a tree and turned it into a Volkswagen with wings. It's just, there's no respect here whatsoever. And I'll get into the examples. Here we go. Here's a list provided by a Japanese user, and it says, the culture is wrong, right? So right off the gate, right? This is something they really wanted to respect. We heard in that, just that little quote right there, right? And it says, The culture is wrong. The building is wrong. Now, we've seen this repeated over and over that they're confusing Korean and Chinese with Japanese architecture. Now, again, as a Westerner who has no investment in these lands, has no interest in them, has no passion for what they create, right? Has no, fire that drives their attention toward them, then sure, you search Japanese architecture and a Chinese restaurant shows up. You're not really going to know the difference because you're not looking at it all the time. People like me, who like to be invested in the culture of Japan, who like to take an interest in what's going on the ground today, as opposed to trying to Google search what it is to be in Japan, we notice these things. Now, again, there are guards on the castle walls, but Japanese castles don't have these kinds of walls, and that's true. They do not have the patrolled kind of walls that European castles do. The Japanese castles also didn't have this sort of grand labyrinthian design. It was a lot like an open sort of great hall kind of place. Because again, the weather made it kind of difficult to control the temperature. So you didn't want places that would get frozen or overheated. So you kept a space mostly open. This was the point of having these large doors that opened to allow air to move freely through the whole space. Again, if you just pay attention for 10 minutes to anybody on YouTube that walks around these formerly occupied homes in Japan, you just YouTube this stuff. You don't even have to try. You just say, Urban Explorer, Japan, and just go crazy, man. You're going to see a lot of places that are built just like the scenery we saw in Assassin's Creed Shadows. And the people that are exploring these most of the time are familiar with why these things are built this way. Because again, in the modern era, even modern architecture in Japan obeys some of the rules from the past because ventilation's great when you live in a humid climate. I don't know about you. I live up in the north, and when humid hits us up here in Maine, when the humidity hits us up here in Maine, man, it sucks. Everything is just sticky and awful. So as soon as a breeze comes through, you're opening all the windows and doors to chase that heavy air out. Well, ta-da, giant doors on either side of your Great Hall-style house. Look at that. Chases all the ugly air out, lets the fresh, cool air through when it comes. But Assassin's Creed Shadows, we just can't obey that. These Chinese people, they have a better idea. So we're just going to copy-paste that into Sengoku era Japan because they're just the same people, right? Ubisoft? They're the same people, right, Frenchie? Just like you and the Spaniards. You're the same people, right? You and Spain, France and Spain, just interchangeable, right? Nothing, no difference between you guys, right? Leon especially is a great example of how, the same you people are, right? Right? Spain and France. Anyway, the religion is wrong. Buddhism and Shinto worship rituals are mixed together. And we saw this again in the Assassin's Creed gameplay trailer, as well as the just scene-setting atmospheric trailer, that the Buddhism and Shintoism are just sort of merged together. There's no distinction between the two. Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines are right next to each other. You got Shinto gates outside of Buddhist shrines. It's mayhem. Okay, now to explain this to a Westerner, all right, I pay attention to this stuff. I care about it because I find it fascinating. I don't hate people that are different than me. I want to understand them. It's a crazy concept, I know. It's wild like that. But to put this into context, it's like sticking a Baptist church out in front of a Catholic church, okay? It's like sticking Baptist signs, welcome to the Baptist church, and then there's this grand Gothic cathedral looking at you as you park in this dirt parking lot out front. It's just hold on a minute, little different, this was misleading, this is not where this belongs, one of these things is not like the other. And again, to someone looking from the outside, Buddhist rituals and Shinto rituals, well, you see Asian people doing them, so they must be the same, right, Frenchie? Right? Now, I know there's French users out there that are offended by this, but I want to go after this Onnee guy. I want to make him understand the mistake that he made. That's why I'm talking this way. I'm addressing this man, not the greater French audience that's just as mad as we are about this, okay? Please understand, I'm not attacking the French in general. I'm trying to humiliate the guy that thinks this way about the Japanese, Chinese, Koreans. You're all the same to him. He's acting like, oh yes, well, we'll just blend all of it together. Who cares? But we want to attract a Japanese audience. Look, we made a McDonald's version of Japan. Do you like it? Ronald McDonald's a shogun. What am I saying? That's a way cooler game, right? We'd be down for that. Like a warring era Japan of all the American fast food joints, just complete absolute abandon of history. Wouldn't that be great, right? You got Wendy and the KFC Colonel, and just they're all Japanese themed, like shoguns and stuff, and that's it, right? It's not like historical in any way, shape, or form. You can even have like a turned upside down KFC bucket on the Colonel, right? But what's even more outrageous is that the tatami is wrong, right? And so I want to bring your attention to the tatami mats. This is a very important thing in the trailer, okay? So we saw this. This is where Yasuke, I believe, is introduced to Nobunaga, and he's all knelt down. This is where we see him like look up with that sort of like "I can belong here" face. I can has cheeseburger face. I'm sorry, I don't know what they were thinking when they were doing that mocap. Like, seriously, that's like, don't do that. That's not a good face to be making, and like no like explanatory dialogue happening, right? There's no like, hey, this is why this guy is looking this way. Otherwise, he looks kind of Brokeback Mountain-y. But there again, I mean, that's an option in the game too, right? You can make Yasuke gay if you want. So I guess maybe they're just trying to hint at that, maybe? Like, psst, by the way, those eyes, they mean what you think they mean. Right, Frenchie? Right? Anyway, it's like Napoleon, right? We all know he was all, right? You know, Napoleon. Again, I'm trying to go Monet, right? I'm trying to get Onnee here, trying to attract his attention to just how broad brushing a culture works. So again, take a look at the tatami mats. As you can see, they kind of look like the pre-made frozen rolls that you get from the supermarket. You know, you go to the frozen food aisle, there's frozen bread for some reason because people hate the world, I guess. I don't know. I don't know who freezes bread. It's an absolutely insane concept. Just make it. Seriously. There's YouTube videos, dude. I'm not lying to you. You can YouTube these things. You can make weird tasting bread, right? Like crazy good tasting bread that doesn't taste like a tatami mat, right? But it looks like this stuff that you find in the frozen bread section. Hell, otherwise. Hell. Looks like a good place to be doing this. And now the other thing I have to point out about this, okay? Tatami mats are supposed to be rectangular, all right? They're supposed to be in rectangle form. But that's not the most egregious problem here, okay? I want you to take, we're not even to it, right? This is another problem. We still got another problem, okay? Still more to come. Here we go. Take a look at this, all right? So if you're just listening, you're driving, can't look at your screen because you cause an accident, don't do that. Just listen right here, all right? So they're in a Japanese Great Hall space. This is meant to be where the regional lord, Nobunaga, the big honcho, the head honcho, the guy that everybody respects and listens to, is hanging out. And it honestly just looks like your average home. It really doesn't have any like gravitas to this space. And don't get me wrong, you're not expecting some giant throne, you're not expecting some like ornate dragon statue for him to be sitting in the middle of like it's a throne or something. But there's not even any like lighting here for like candles or torches. It's quite literally the daytime lighting, and there appears to be some kind of ceremony happening, but there's absolutely no evidence of any ceremony happening. It's very bizarre. And again, like we have to point out, like firstly, having a page up at that space next to Nobunaga is like no. Completely, absolutely unethical. No. Can't do this. That's very bad. That's how you get killed. That is such an amount of disrespect, according to what was happening in the Sengoku era as far as treatment to the regional lords and daimyos went, okay? Such an immense form of disrespect to consider yourself on the same level, to be that close to Nobunaga. You are to be facing him at a distance with your face down, as you see these people in the front are. Now, I'm going to explain to the people who are listening. So the room is filled with Japanese. It appears to be samurai, but they are not in armor. They are in like a ceremonial, very. They're not ornate, but they are in a very pristine sort of condition. These are not regular day clothes that these men are wearing. But more importantly, their position is that they are sorry, that they are being reprimanded, that they are being punished. The position they are taking, everyone should be sitting crisscross applesauce if it's a nice, peaceful meeting. We're just hanging out, being bros. Nobunaga's the Chad. We're all cool with it, you know. That's what it's, you know, you're supposed to sit crisscross applesauce. And I'm using that terminology again to belittle Onnee, okay? I'm using that term to belittle this man. Instead, they're up on their knees with their heads tilted down as though to apologize for what's happening here. Now, this appears to be the introduction of Yasuke. So is everybody sorry that they interrupted Nobunaga to bother him with this? Because if that's what it is, why are they doing it to begin with? It's not like there's other things to be done in the Sengoku era, right, guys? You're just that bored, you got to bother Nobunaga with this guy that washed up on shore, right? Because again, the story in Assassin's Creed that we've heard so far is that Yasuke washed up on shore after surviving a slaver ship being sank. All right? He wasn't property that was rendered to Nobunaga in this game. He arrived of other means to Japan and thus became an assassin. So here's the problem with this space, though. I want you to take this in. So we see this big, wide open space, doors on the side, like I was talking about earlier, right? So far, that's accurate. This does not look like a regional lord's hall, but they're trying. Instead, it looks like a dining hall. As you can see here, if you're watching, the tatami mats are rectangular, as you can see. But this is a banquet hall. Now, again, the low tables where you're sitting on the floor or sitting on a pillow are meant to go in here, not the tall tables that the European-style banquet halls are used to housing, and the chairs that kind of scrape the floor. Everyone is supposed to be in their socks or slippers in this space as well, so the floor is not necessarily meant to be as rigid as a hardwood floor would be. And then also, as we saw with Nobunaga, there's an alcove in the back here that is roughly a rectangle shape, and here it is in the banquet hall. Check it out. There's a rectangle space with a slightly raised stage, just like it's a banquet hall that, like, at a hotel. They were staying at the hotel, and they were like, this looks like where a regional lord would hear out the pleas of a foreigner. Not enjoy delicious fried chicken on Christmas, inexplicably. But here we go. There's even further abuses here, okay? So one of the scenes with Naue shows us her sneaking around this. It would appear to be an intimate space. I would guess that this is either like a bedroom or some type of living space or reflection space. It's meant to be of a solitary nature. But what's important to notice here is the painting that is on the separator line, the separator wall here, the false wall. The painting that's on here is known as the Four Admirers. It's a very, very, very important, like, cultural milestone piece of work. It's not necessarily like something that's like printed on T-shirts and, like, spray painted on the side of buildings. It's not like some kind of like rallying cry or a piece of pop art. This is very much a reflection of like the beauty of the era, of the simplicity, the tranquil feeling of just the Edo period of Japan, not the Sengoku period of Japan. As you see here, 17th and early 18th century is when this is roughly dated to have been made. And that means that the 1600s are when this was made. Now, I'll let you know that this game is set in the 1550s, okay? So a full 50 years or more later is when this picture was created. And yet here is Naue, our good friend ninja lady here, who possibly could be a lesbian if you so decide, because whatever. The thing that I remember most about Japan is just the open homosexuality, right? Just from the get-go, right? As soon as those Korean fishermen, as soon as the Chinese fishermen, as soon as whoever landed on that island, the Russians, whoever, right? Whoever landed first, right? As soon as those people got there, they were like, all right, time to be gay. No, this was not the case. This is the fantasy of the Frenchies. Again, the fantasies of Onnée. But here we go. Let's just take this in. Let's just drink this in for a minute, okay? So again, the Four Admirers right here on this separator wall, which, how? Okay? That's not where it belongs. Let's just say that. That's not where it belongs. So we'll go over here again, the Edo period, 1615 to 1868. Now, the game itself, as I said, is set in the 1550s. So we have a problem. We have time-traveling works of art, okay, that are strangely aboard like Wish.com looking pieces of furniture, right? Like everything in here looks like it came from Wish.com. But maybe it came from Amazon, because as you guys remember, in their quest for authenticity, at the Japan Expo this year in Paris, Ubisoft decided that their booth should have One Piece's Zoro sword there, the Katetsu, the red sword with the grippy thing in the middle. Again, I'm told that this is very popular, but I've never seen a katana, either historical or even one of the fun little fake ones that they make with all the groovy colors on it, right? The colored blades and stuff. I've never seen the grip in the middle like that. It seems to be like almost exclusively to Zoro and anime characters. And again, to verify, this is the Amazon listing you see right here. Right here, there's the sword right there. And then, oh, they're down there. Whoops, there's the sword with the middle grippy things. Whoopsies. Here's another problem, too. The geisha, made in China. All right, so here's the statue at the expo booth. Made in China. Add to that, too, the geisha were not part of the Sengoku era, right? So it's going to be very funny if Yasuke is running into geisha, who I believe pre-existed. They were before the Sengoku era. I could be wrong, but I believe the geisha were before the Sengoku era. So this was sometime around the 1400s. I could be wrong. Correct me in the comments below. But again, more time-traveling artifacts in Assassin's Creed, but, you know, that's no surprise. That's really no surprise. But that's what we're looking at, okay? The greater mistake of these people is that they just don't care, and they want you to believe that they do, much like Thomas Lockley wants you to believe that he cares about this African slave that he's profiting off of, right? He wants you to believe that he's very, very like, we're finally bringing the truth of Yosuke to the world. Right. They want you he wants you to really believe that he cares about this. But really, he found a little gap in Japanese history and decided to write some fan fiction inside of it. As we've heard from Japanese audience members that reply in our comments below, right? They've let us know that in Japan, Lockley's book is listed as fiction. However, in the English-speaking world, it's listed as nonfiction. I don't know about you, but there's an inherent problem with that, right? Right? But I digress, right? This is what we're dealing with Ubisoft. They have dug their heels in here and they have said, we are trying to make the most authentic game possible, even though the reality, right, the reality of it is that they're not. And in any way, shape, or form, it's a lie to suggest that they are. What really would have worked to their advantage is sticking to that apology that they made. Remember the bright red apology? Sticking to that apology where they said, you know, it's really historical fiction. We're having a lot of fun. Yes, we hired historians and cultural experts, but really we disregarded what they have to say and we decided to make our own game anyway with all sorts of historical inaccuracies. Enjoy it. It really would have made more sense to accept the failure of their attempt to create something that was both woke and historically accurate, because you can't do both. You can't do both. Sorry. Either way, guys, until the next one, good luck out there.